The Do This podcast is part of the Win, Make, Give podcast network. Join hosts Bob Stewart and Chad Hyams as they dive into effective business growth strategies with Alivia Lasinski, Executive Director of Operations at Place. Alivia shares her journey from managing 600 real estate transactions with a lean team to implementing systems for optimal productivity. Discover the power of leveraging technology, conducting time audits, and optimizing operations. This episode offers practical insights into leading with impact and maximizing team potential. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Do This podcast presented by Brivity.
Hey, Chad Hyams.
Bob Stewart.
I'm back. I've been gone for a couple weeks.
Thank goodness we have missed you. Boy, we had some amazing Do This lessons, though. Folks, go back to the recordings, because when Bob's not here, boy, I get some good questions asked. When Bob's here, but we're glad you're back, Bob Stewart.
It's not about me, though. It's about Alivia. Alivia, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Bob and Chad.
Do me a favor, introduce yourself to our audience so everybody knows who you are before we jump into what you did to grow the business. But introduce yourself first, please.
Absolutely, yes. My name is Alivia Lasinski, and I'm the Executive Director of Operations for Place. I've been with Ben Kinney and his organization for just about 6 years now and started as the Director of Operations on his real estate team. So I think we're going to get more into that.
All right. So normally we just start off, we ask you a question that's tell us what you've done in the last year to grow your business. But if you don't mind, we'll definitely probably get into some of what you've been doing in the last year to grow a massive organization. But can we go a little bit further back than a year? And can we put you back into the seat of the Director of Operations on the Ben Kinney team in Bellingham, Washington, at a time, Alivia, when they are doing, maybe when you're getting started, about 400 and later about 600 transactions a year? Can we put you into that place and have you put on your Director of Operations hat now and tell us what did you do in that year to help the team grow so large?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting as we keep going is I think that the answer to that, as well as what I continue to do in my role with Place, is going to be very similar. So when I was in that role, I got hired on and I knew nothing about real estate. I didn't know what pending meant. And at that time, actually, the team was doing 600 transactions a year. So I was just thrown right into the fire. And it was a very lean staffing team. And there was 4 VAs and there was 1 listing manager, and then there was me. And we were running 600 transactions a year through 5 different brokerage offices. And I get in there, I start going, I'm trying to learn. And then about a month in, the listing manager quits. And so all of a sudden it's me and 4 VAs doing the 600 transactions in 5 brokerage offices. And that was a lot. It was crazy. I would not wish that on anyone. But what that allowed me to really do was take the systems knowledge that I had from the past and get into the Brivity transaction system and see what were the areas where the balls were dropping, what were the areas where it was causing problems that were taking a bunch of my time to fix, what were the areas where I was constantly getting questions and people coming to me and needing things that I could be more proactive about. And also, almost more importantly, is what were the areas where my incredibly intelligent Brivity VAs that taught me everything that I knew about real estate were not being leveraged to the highest level. And so it was really optimizing those transaction auto plans and optimizing the use of the virtual assistants that was the most impactful thing that I did to grow that business. And my colleagues and I, we still joke to this day that we believe that the transaction system within Brivity and high-level use of Brivity virtual assistants is the most impactful thing you can do to run an efficient and profitable real estate team. Like, we will die on that hill. We're like, what are the discounts for the group plot? Because we want to put down the deposit. Like, we're there. We're still all in on it 6 years later.
You guys, it's interesting because we, as we partner at Place with different businesses around the United States, big ones, right? Businesses doing like the number you were doing. One of the number one kind of expenditures we see is staff. And so you'll see businesses, and Alivia, you get a chance to like embed with these businesses now today in your role, right? And help them kind of unwind what everybody's doing and why everybody thinks they're so busy and why it takes 6 people to do the job that you guys were doing with 2. Let me ask this, because I think when you're in that, when you got 600 going on, you're the one person, even though you had your 4 VAs, like I'm assuming that every day, all day, you could find busy work to do. How did you carve out the time when I'm sure you felt incredibly busy? How did you carve that time out to start working on the systems, improving the systems, finding the leverage?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's critical, Bob, because like you said, when you're running a business at that level, you're never going to have the time. So if you're always waiting for that opportune moment or for things to slow down or to get a pause in the business, the winter season, so that you can work on your projects, like that is never going to happen. And if that does happen for you, then you're overstaffed, right? Because if you're finding yourself with extra time, you've got too many staff. And so it's really, really important to have those blocks on the calendar. And this is something that I came in with from my past experience. I worked in hotels. And so for any of you who have been to a busy hotel, like that never stops either, right? There's constantly people that need stuff. And so I had trained myself in hotel management to pull away from all of that and be able to work on the systems that would allow that hotel to improve, would allow that hotel to grow, meet the metrics that were expected of me. And so I came in already with that muscle built, and I've continued to build it in the real estate space. And so luckily for me, though, is that because I already had the muscle built, that's what I started doing right away. When we had these 600 transactions, I could easily say, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about real estate. I need to just be in this constantly working these transactions. But instead, I set aside religiously that hour every single day. And like, yes, that was a very tumultuous time. And sometimes I worked hours that I do not wish upon anyone, but that was my reality. That was the case. And I was all in. I was going to do whatever it took to make that work. But even today, like regardless of what the day is, regardless of what's thrown at me, every single day, I spend at least 1 hour of completely uninterrupted time. That means no text messages, no emails, no people coming in and talking to me, no bleeping on my Apple Watch. Like our world is filled with distractions and we have to shut them out, especially like I'll just tell you guys to have a reality basis. Like I suffer from ADHD like pretty bad. And I don't medicate myself for it because I think that there's value to it, but I have a really, really hard time focusing. And so if there's a distraction, I'm going to follow it. And so I have to protect myself. And that is the way that I did that, is spending at least that hour every single day.
I want to ask a question about staffing. Okay. So you said when you started, you had 4 VAs, listing manager, and you. And then, of course, the listing manager vanishes. Over the time that you were in that role, how often did you turn over a VA? Did you ever turn over a VA? And by using the Brivity VAs, so knowing that they're already trained in the system, what's the speed bump or the challenge when bringing a new person in that you have been working with? Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So there were 2 VAs that were on that team when I started that are still on that team today, and they're absolutely incredible. But I did have some turnover in the other 2. And so that was a really big learning moment for me because I had never managed anyone virtually. In hotels, all my people were in person. And so I learned a lot about how to do that correctly and how to do it incorrectly. And so when I would bring these new VAs on, yes, they're trained in the Brivity system, but I vastly underestimated the way that I needed to be prepared in terms of my training materials in order for them to be successful. And so what I learned very quickly is that I shouldn't just train a person on the whole entire system, everything I want them to do, because then if it turns out that they're not learning it or this isn't the right job fit for them, I've wasted how many hours in training, and then it's not even the right person. That's not the right role for them. Or I just expect them to be able to jump in, start shadowing another VA, and then start doing the job without having instructions detailed in all of my tasks, without having videos for the things that are more complicated where you need to click very specific places. And so I learned all of that really quickly and then corrected those things so that in the future, when I brought on the next VAs, I had that training plan already set up for them. And it was successful to build upon all the training that does come from Brivity, but me taking ownership of what's the training that I need to do for my own process and my own team.
Alivia, can you talk for a second about, like, Ben has this concept in our world where he wants us to replace ourselves, right? And this works in our world because Ben is continuing to expand his world, right? And so there's always like these more opportunities for us. But you said something in there, you said putting detailed instructions in my tasks. And I think what probably 90% of our listeners here have inside of their transaction plans for a given task is like a headline of what that thing needs to be done, and they know what it means and they know how to do it in their head. And so every day that task comes up and they go do it and then they check it off. Talk about that idea of like, dig in on that, on that I've got instructions in there. And really for us, it's this idea that you are looking to replace yourself. And literally, if you got hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody could step in and do the job. Don't get hit by a bus, please.
I like to use move to Mexico as my metaphor for that. It's just a little more positive.
There you go.
But yes, so I think that was a benefit of me coming in with no real estate knowledge is when the VAs were showing me the plans that existed, which there were some plans on that team, but they were probably about maybe 20% of what I built them out to be. And so they would show me the process and they'd say, okay, yeah, we're going to click this task and this is all the things that it means. And I'm like, okay, so that one task means all these other things. Why aren't there other tasks for those other pieces? Like, how do you know to do that? And they're like, oh, well, we know it's just a part of the process, or we know it's written down in this manual. It's like, well, how do you know to check the manual? Like, I'm not a fan of manuals and playbooks. Like, I want everything to be in a spot so that someone doesn't have to remember to go look at the document. And so that's really what I used is, okay, this step means this, and then this step means this step means this. And for each one, the instructions are detailed. And as we continued to go, I would see areas where there would be mistakes made, or there would be areas I had to plug in because there was something more complicated happening. And that allowed me to be able to build these if this, then that situations with the contingent tasks of check off this task if this is a condo. If it's not a condo, delete it. But if it gets checked off and it's a condo, then I'm getting my tasks for HOA and for anything else that might come up specific to a condo. But if it's not a condo, we never need to see those tasks because it's not applicable to those other types of transactions. And so that was really key for us to evolve those tasks such that anyone could come in and do them. And that concept of replacing yourself, that might sound scary to some of you on this call. You might be like, oh God, like I don't want the system to take my job, right? But that's not what this is. Like you are not a leader, you're not a high contributor if you're not looking to level up your contributions. If you always want to stay in this level of doing things that could be automated or doing things that could be leveraged to a VA, then you're not providing impact on your team. And so that's kind of a mindset shift of how do I make sure that I'm providing the largest impact? And in order to do that, I need to be able to either train a VA, I need to be able to automate something, or I need to just eliminate something altogether if I've just been doing something a certain way, because that's the way we've always done it. Does it still need to be done?
Talk about that for a second, because I think in every business that gets to a place where we're doing 100 transactions, or heck, it starts happening earlier, but especially when you get to a place where that's doing 600 transactions, talk about that, like auditing for subtraction, like where I'm looking for things that aren't making an impact anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do that with the time study. I track everything I do in 15-minute increments for about 2 weeks, once a quarter. And so I'm writing down all the stuff that I'm doing. And then I go back and I look at that and I reflect and I'm like, gosh, why did I just spend so much time on this thing? Like, what is that even doing for the business? And I also think it's important. Ben talks about this all the time is when you get out of a process, like for example, I've been out of transactions for a while now. But I'm working with a team right now where I'm helping them with some of their transaction stuff. And that's causing me to plug back in to some of those plans and look through those processes. And that's critical for me. I always want to find a way to plug myself into pieces of the business that I have sort of pulled out of as my role has grown, because then I'm able to see, okay, yeah, this was the way that we were doing it back when I set up this system, but it doesn't need to stay that way. Like just because I put that in there doesn't mean it's right. And so then I'm asking the people doing that role now, so how does that look for you now? Now that we've evolved this technology, now that this new thing is out in Brivity, what value is this task bringing today? And then if the person doesn't have a good answer for that, or if they say something and I'm like, I don't really think I agree with that, then we just strike it, because you should always be evolving auto planes. You should always be evolving the things that you're doing in your role, or else again, you're not able to grow and have increased impact.
So you do these time studies. I love that time study concept. You've done this for yourself. I'm assuming you've had, directors of operations in our world, in our place world, do this. What are some of the lies that directors of operations tell themselves that are important that aren't actually important? You want to edit my question, Chad?
Yeah. Before you do that, and that's a great question, Bob. Before you do that, Alivia, explain for those who are watching who don't know what a time audit truly is. You kind of quickly went over it before, but explain what a time audit is. If you were having a VA do it or a director of operations, what would you be telling them to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see Kelly put in the chat, she loves the time studies with the VAs too. I think anyone in any operations role should be doing time studies, just to be super clear. So what that looks like is we have a template for it within our organization, but honestly, you could use a blank sheet of paper. It really doesn't matter. But what you do is you write out, like, let's say I start my day. Today I started, I think, at 7:45. And so at 7:45, I know, man.
You were lifting weights at 3:30 a.m. and running 5 miles.
Yeah, Chad had already been up for 6 hours.
It's okay, but Bob wasn't even rolling over yet at that point, so don't even.
Yeah, Bob's. I was going to say,
track practice. I was at track practice this morning.
Okay, anyways, you don't need to put those things on your time study. You start it when you start working.
Yeah.
And so at 7:45, I would have written down, like, what was the first thing that I did? Like, I was interviewing someone this morning. And so the first thing that I did is I was preparing for that interview. So I come in, I have the sheet of paper right next to me. I write down, prepare for interview. I work on that until it's done. Then when that's done, I go to my time study, and then I see what time it is now. So let's say now it's 8 o'clock. I spent 15 minutes preparing, and actually 8 o'clock is the time of the interview. So now I'm going to write down, interview this person. And then I go into that interview. When that interview's done, I go back to the time study and I write down what the next thing is that I'm doing. So I'm not sitting there and like detailing out a ton of stuff. I'm just, every time I task switch, I go back and I write what that next thing is. Sometimes I have multiple things within a 15-minute block, but my goal and what I strive for as I've gotten better at this is to have less things in each 15-minute block, because that means I'm getting better at time blocking and time batching, so that I'm not constantly task switching within 15 minutes, because task switching leads to decreased productivity.
Absolutely. What happens though when it does happen? Like, someone comes walking in your door, it wasn't locked, they got a second, or, an email pops up and you see it's from Ben and you're like, oh, this one I got to answer because, it's Ben sending an email. You just write that down in that 15-minute that I was prepping for you, answered email, the 3 things you did during that 15-minute block.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I, in the middle of that prep, if someone had interrupted me, someone called me on the phone, I would just write that in there. Now I'm doing this thing, because anytime some new thing happens, I just do that. And even if someone comes into me, I'll be like, oh yeah, like I'm actually doing a time study right now. I'm just going to write this down real quick that we're here, we're doing this now. And then I give them my full attention. So you have to do it at the time that the thing happens, or else you're going to be trying to remember all the stuff that you did, and you're going to end up with this super weird thing that's not even helpful for you.
Okay. Do you get in? I went and got coffee. I went to the ladies' room.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
all that stuff goes on there
Yep.
just so everyone knows, right, as they're paying. Now let's go to Bob's question. What are the big lies? Now that you've shown us how to do it, what are the big lies that people are putting on there that keep showing up?
And just the things people tell themselves they're busy with, where when you look at the actual time study, you're like, this should be a VA's work, or that, like, where are we wasting time?
And I'm doing it personally, right? You said this is anybody in operations. Folks, everybody should do it, because when I did a recent one on myself, ChatGPT got a lot of work from me, right? It was like, well, why am I doing that? I could ask this one prompt of ChatGPT and it could take care of 15 minutes of work for me right there along that line. That's why we're doing it. What are those things, though, that people are pretending to do to be busy that they should be passing off?
Yeah. And I think, Chad, what you just said is, like, if I was to say something overarching, and then I'll get a little bit more detailed, but overarching about these lies that people tell themselves is that they tell themselves that they are being super productive, or they're having a really productive day, when in fact they are doing things that can be automated, eliminated, or delegated. And sometimes you just don't have the visual of that. Like, you're not able to reflect back and actually have the self-awareness that you're doing those things, especially if this is not a normal practice for you. You don't have that self-awareness unless you do something like this, so that you can actually go back and look. Like you just said, Chad, that gave you the insight of like, oh God, why am I spending time on this? I should be sending this to ChatGPT. And so I think the biggest lie is transactions. Is saying, I'm so busy with all these transactions. I actually hear that from teams a lot. And so then I ask them, well, how many transactions have you done this year? And they tell me. And like, let's just say the answer is like 15. And I'm like, okay, so it's mid-April and your team has closed 15 transactions. So that's like, I don't know, Bob, you're the math guy. How many is that a month? Like, not very many, right?
Yeah, it's three and a half. No.
3.5 a month. And then I asked them, how much time are you spending doing these 3.5 transactions a month? And they have this long chunk in all their time blocks of all this time they're spending in transactions. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is taking all that time? And so
reading every
then I'm
contract 3 or 4
asking
times. Like,
well, you know what it is, Bob? It's a mixture of things usually. So it's a mixture of, and it all leads back to the Brivity system is the solution for all of it, because it's, first, they're not leveraging. If they have a VA, they have their VA doing like just the marketing, like using marketer and creating graphics, or they have the VA like hardly doing anything. And so there's a lot of opportunity for leverage. But then it's also that they have so much of it in their head that when things start to get crazy or other things start happening, they forget stuff or things fall through the cracks, and they spend so much time in reactivity mode that they're constantly like putting out
just
fires.
cleaning up all the time, putting out fires,
Yeah,
cleaning up the
which
mess,
takes
forgetting about that
so
thing.
much time. Whereas, like, if they were just proactive because they were running a consistent system every time, because they knew all the stuff that they had to do 3 days before this contingency, 7 days after this contingency, if all of that just appeared proactively versus, oh my God, I completely forgot about this date. Now I need this paperwork. I got to call this agent. I got to call this client. I got to call this lender. Like, that to me is just, it's so frantic. It takes so much time. And I think that is where a lot of people get caught up, is they think that they need to do all that stuff, when in fact, if they just had a system that they were running, a better system, then that wouldn't take all that time.
How much of it is they're just protecting their job? They're attempting to look busy. They don't want to leverage everything because someone might realize we don't need them because we have all these other things. how much of it is just fear of being efficient because you might lose your job, instead of, like you did, I'm going to be so efficient, you're going to be forced to promote me to a better and bigger opportunity because I was so good at what I did there. I worked myself out.
Can I add on to Chad's question? Let's just assume that there's a decent chunk of that, right? Like there's a decent chunk of I'm kind of protecting my job and I want to look important around here. And maybe to answer the question then, what should a director of operations be doing with that time, right? Like, okay, we're all going to concede they're probably, not super efficient in that job, and they're likely holding on to it because it's what makes them feel important to the organization. But what should be making them important to the organization?
Yeah, that's really good. And I think a lot of people do fall into that of protecting their job, either out of, I think for some people it's legitimately like, I like to do these lower level tasks because they're easy and I just want to have an easy job, right? I think that that's some people, but I'm looking at this list of names here that are on this call, and I'm guessing that you all are high performers, and that's not you, right? So I'm going to speak to the other side of that. The people who are maybe holding on to those things because they think that they are, like you said, Bob, that it makes them look important. Like spending all that time shows that, hey, like I'm really, really being leveraged for the team. I'm spending so much time in transactions so my agents don't have to do it. I want to provide high level service. And so there's all those things that we might tell ourselves about the reason why we haven't put more of the work into the system. But that is a lie that you're telling yourself, because the best possible service that you could be providing is allowing your team to grow. And yes, that includes agent service, which is incredibly important. But it also includes making sure that your business continues to survive. Like we have to continue to get more and more deals on the table, or else our business is going to go under. And as an operations person, we are often the largest expense in a business because we're a fixed expense. They have to pay our salary, whether there are transactions or not. And so we need to be thinking constantly about, how am I earning at least one times, if not 3, 5 times my salary in business for the organization? And so when I think about what we could be doing, we need to be having measurable metrics that we're moving forward the business in some different way. So to break this down, in our place organization, we have 5 segments that make up our operations model, the things that operations should be owning at least the systems and support for in our real estate team. And so the first is leverage technology. You all are super familiar with that because you're on these calls. But the second, impact productivity. Like, what are you as an operations person actually doing in a measurable way to show that I am helping our agents become more productive? So that's one. And then another one is impacting growth.
Quick example there. It might be I'm the one that's responsible for hosting our call night that we do once a month at the start of the month, and I organize that call night. I get our agents bought in, and we see appointments come out of that call night, so I can kind of directly tie that to an effort that I led. Okay.
You set it up proactively such that each agent is getting at least one appointment. So it's not just you order pizza and you put up some decor and you say, done. It's like you have to be proactive, right? And so, yes, that's an example in productivity. Then the next one is impact growth. So what are you as operations doing to either increase the number of recruits coming into the business or increase retention? And so that might include, are you posting ads for new agents to come in? Are you making screening calls and setting appointments for your team leaders so that they can interview these agents? Like, what are those specific metrics? Like, am I setting 2 appointments a week for my team leader, whatever that metric is?
And then the next one, operation, Olivia, would you say, to be more exact on it, when a transaction closes would you say that the director of operations should be reaching out to the co-op agent on there? Like, could that be part of one of those plans that they have that, closed? Great. My job is now to call them to schedule a meeting with my rainmaker, things like that, to help growth happen on the team. Okay.
Yeah, so either that the ops leader is either doing that or that they're setting up the system such that their operator is doing it and they're inspecting that for their operator to make sure it's actually happening, or their team leader. So it's either one. It depends on who wants to actually be making those calls because sometimes the team lead prefers to do those relationships with the experienced agents. But either way, you're absolutely correct, Chad, that that's a huge opportunity for recruiting.
Okay. That's the first three things with some real life examples. Keep going.
And then the next is close the loyalty gap. So our place president, Chris Stewart, he talks about the difference between the people who like their agent and actually come back and work with them. Very large gap. And so to close that, we want to be reminding our clients post-closing that we're the resource for everything home so that they keep using us. And so that might include a call to the client after closing to ask for referrals and ask for a review. That might include a call every year on that client's anniversary from the ops person so that you're actually staying in relationship from the team versus just putting that on the agent. So those are some of the things in that area, maybe event planning as well.
Especially
and then the last
agent
one
might leave the team.
Yeah.
And the ops
Exactly.
person probably isn't. They're those people that are there with the team. So if that agent decided to move, leave, whatever, you're still making the call on behalf of the team to those clients. That's a great one, Olivia.
Exactly. And then the last one is a bit more of a catch-all, but it's systems for scale. And that includes things like, are we documenting processes? Do we have something documented such that if I move to Mexico, someone else is going to be able to come in and get my stuff done, right? Like that's a scalable business. It can't all live in someone's head. That's a dangerous business. And then are we leveraging VAs to the highest level? Do we have a process for all of our finances that we're actually making sure we have a budget and our P&L and that information going in and out in a way that flows and is super systematized? And do we have a process for our online presence, our reputation management through social media, Google Business Ads, whatever that is? Those things all fit into that last bucket of systems for scale.
Man, Alivia, this was amazing. Thank you for taking the time. You're
put it on your time audit. Good job.
Yeah,
30 minutes.
We didn't get a chance to kind of talk about, we dabbled around it. Your role here at Place today, where you're incredibly valuable. You're one of my favorite humans. Thank you for taking the time. We told you we'd get you out of here right at the top of the hour. So that is now. You have an amazing rest of your day and a great week. Everybody, we'll see you. Chad, I'll see you next week. Okay, we'll be back here for more.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.